Hi, I'm SuperSocks, and this new video is all about the recent release, Atomic Heart. Now, I've had my eye on this game for a good couple of years now, since I first learned about it, and it just drew me in straight away because it was so clearly inspired by some of my favourite games of my youth, the likes of BioShock, Half-Life, and System Shock. I've spent around 15 hours or so with this game so far. I'll be honest, I haven't 100% finished it, but I think I've played enough now to form a well-rounded opinion of what works and what doesn't. Now, this is the official tagline for the game on Steam. In a mad and sublime utopian world, take part in explosive encounters, adapt your fighting style to each opponent, use your environment and upgrade your equipment to fulfill your mission. If you want to reach the truth, you'll have to pay in blood. Now, the high-level synopsis is one thing. That's to get the old juices flowing and get you excited to play. But what I want to know and what I wanted to find out during the course of playing this is, what does it feel like to play as the protagonist? What's he like to play as? How does he behave? How do the NPCs behave? What's the story like? The combat? The upgrade paths? All sorts of things. How do the enemies work? Is the AI good? Is it bad? And this is what I want to cover in my I'm not going to say review, but what I think of my thoughts and opinions on it and my impressions of the game, just to help people keep them informed. So, this is Atomic Heart. So what's the basic setup? Well, the game's set in an alternative 1950s USSR, where the country's become the next new superpower following World War II. You play as an army officer called P3, and you're sent by a Professor Sechenov, who is your mentor and the person responsible for saving your life in a previous battle mentioned in the game. And you're sent to the Vavlov complex in Facility 3826 as a precursor to an upcoming mission, basically. After a rather lovely homage to BioShock and Half-Life, everything goes completely tits up and you're knee-deep in rebellious robots and up to your eyes in conspiracies, utilising a series of weapons from axes, grenade launchers, with a quick stop-off at AK-47 and shotgun territory, alongside powers provided to you through your trusty glove companion Charles. It's up to P3 to sort this mess out, and it's all in a day's work, really. So how is the game functionally? How does it feel to play, outside of what you actually have to do? For me, looking at it, a lot has been thrown at the wall with this game, and some of it sticks, some of it feels good, some of it not so much, and probably could have needed a bit of work, and that's saying something for a game that's been in development for, I think, 7+ years. It clearly wears its influences on its sleeves, from the framing of the story to the powers you use. Whilst not as plentiful as the likes of BioShock or Half-Life, etc. One thing to be clear on, however, is that there is no immersive sim elements. It looks like, when you go back and watch some of the trailers, it looks like you can do things like you can do in Bethesda's Prey, for instance, and you can mould the style of play around how you want to take on missions and things like that. That's not really the case here. There is a stealth mechanic, but honestly, you hardly ever need to use it, or I hardly would ever want to use it. The combat is solid, if a little bit repetitive after a while, and the writing generally is subpar across the board. The biggest selling point of the game for me is the setting. The look and the feel of this game is brilliant. I love it. Yet sometimes it just doesn't feel quite coherent, but I'll get onto that in a minute. Graphically speaking, the 50s Russian aesthetic and the robots within this universe are all modelled lovingly. The animations especially are exceptional. I love the way that robots react to being hit. I like the metallic scars they get when you smash them in the face with an axe, how they recoil when you use some of your powers, how the buildings look, how the architecture is. It's very Russian, dare I say, sort of this whole communist vibe, and the internals of the building, the little nuances in regards to desks scattered around, machinery, obviously the bodies laying around, just little touches. The lighting is great, albeit I don't believe there's ray tracing in this game. I may be wrong, but I don't believe there's ray tracing in this game, but still, it looks absolutely lovely. You can tell a lot of care and attention has been put into creating all the environments. I like the fact that when you go to the upgrade machines and you retrieve a new weapon from them, they open up and you can see the inside. You can see the mechanics of the machines, which I think is a lovely little touch. And the little animations that you get on the death screens, I like those, which are very reminiscent of things like Fallout and Bioshock and things like that. I think they're a lovely little touch. And talking of those death screens, you will see them quite a bit when it comes to the boss fights. I will say that now, but I'll get onto that in a little. The one thing I can say is that this game runs buttery smooth. I have not, in my 15 or so hours, not experienced any crashes or game-breaking bugs. I don't have a powerful PC, but I can get this game to run at about 1440 at max settings, and I think it's around 60 to 70 FPS, which, as far as I'm concerned, is fantastic. It runs smooth. I don't have a problem with it. The one biggest complaint I have right from the off is that there is no FOV slider. I have no idea why that it wasn't included in the PC version at all. It seems ridiculous. It's playable. It is certainly playable. The FOV isn't quite as tight as some other games that I've potentially played in the past. But there are certain times when the action gets really frenetic and and things spinning around you and everything else like that. So, and even from my perspective, the nausea, you could feel it rising a little bit. I will say that. The one thing that doesn't quite sit well for me, though, is the way the environments seem to be put together, and mainly the internal environments here. So you spend a large portion of your game time in enclosed environments, in, dare I say, linear corridor shooter style, with open areas where you'll get attacked by robots and things like that. I hate to harp on about them because obviously the influences are there, things like Half-Life, Bioshock, Prey, all those sorts of games, where each of those games had distinct biomes. They had separate sections where you'd have like an office section, you'd have a medical wing, you'd have a biology wing, things like that, sort of gardens and all those sorts of things in these areas, in these larger buildings. But when you moved through those buildings and you went from biome to biome to biome, it felt natural, it felt organic, that you naturally moved from one to the other. There was a flow to everything. Here, in Atomic Heart, the internal environments are sculptured and the art design is exceptional. It's fantastic, but they all feel tacked onto each other. Like you just go from a 50s corporate office into a botanical section, then into an engineering section in one of these bunkers. And there doesn't seem to flow. It just stops immediately and you're into the next one. And there doesn't seem to be any particular flow to it, which is really quite frustrating. Not frustrating, but it doesn't sit well. It doesn't feel right. And I guess the same goes for the open world as well. It's gorgeous to look at. Some of the vistas you can see when you climb up some towers. Basically, there's points on the map where you climb these towers and you access these small terminals that allow you to see parts of the map and where cameras are, so you could potentially unlock previously locked doors using camera abilities like you would in some Ubisoft games, basically. And some of the vistas you see are brilliant, and I love the mix of the lived-in areas, the small little houses, the small little villages, mixed in with clearly the new, at the time, technology. The robots have clearly put up, like the cameras, all the robotic healing stations, these small robots that are zipping around everywhere to heal damage or repair damaged robots and things like that. I think that works wonderfully, but it still feels a bit empty. Like it doesn't really need to be there as a part of the game. You could almost just go from one indoor facility to another and not worry about the external environments. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of any divergent systems. You just kind of plonked in the map and you have to go from point A to point B, however far that is, using one of the vehicles, the cars that drive poorly, to say this, so you end up finding yourself just running through the map anyway. And there's no divergent systems. Doesn't seem to be any. Sounds weird for me to say this, considering it's supposed to be after a robot rebellion, shall we say, a robot riot. All the people are dead, but there doesn't seem to be much life to it. All the robots that are dotted around the map, their patrols, they just seem to be plonked there, and there doesn't seem to be. You'll go for areas, empty spaces of the map without seeing or hearing anything, and then you'll come to a little bit of fighting with some robots, and then you'll move on. It just doesn't quite gel with me. And to be honest, the way the enemies are designed, not so much designed, the design of the enemies are great, but the way that the combat scenarios are designed in the open world areas, you'll probably generally just want to run through them anyway. So when you fight, and it happens sometimes in internal areas, but you can mitigate it in the internal areas. When you fight the robots in certain areas, and mainly in the outdoor world, the open world, you take down a robot. These medic droids, these flying medic droids, will come along, float down, and try and repair the robot. Now, you can shoot them in internal areas. They're limited in each of the areas that use combat scenarios. They're limited, so you can shoot them down, and you know that they won't come back. In the open area, they are endless. Absolutely endless. You can shoot down a series of robots, think you're in the clear, these medic droids will come along, you'll shoot them down, more will follow, and it's just in an ever non-stop loop. Now, you can stop them by going to a particular terminal within the map to disable their functionality, but it is only temporary. It's not like you're taking it down for that area of the map and then you can move on. And initially, it's kind of entertaining in terms of, I can get some loot from this, I can get some components, metal scrap and all that sort of thing. But then you're just going, it highlights then how repetitive the combat can be, which I'll speak about in a second. It just goes on and on and on and on. So you just find yourself going, I just want to get from this facility to the next facility to forward on the story and get into the guts of the game and not worry about it. In terms of the combat, the melee combat is fantastic. It feels great when you're swinging an axe into the face of a robot and you're seeing the sparks fly, the bits of metal flying off in all directions. It's great. It's very crunchy. There's a power behind each of your swings, and it's great. I love it. The shooting also feels pretty solid, I have to say. The devs seem to have kept the number of weapon types to a minimum, which is good. They haven't gone over and above. I think there's like 5 weapons. There's pistol, shotgun, an electric kind of EMP handgun, a rocket launcher, a grenade launcher, sorry, and another electricity-based weapon, pulse weapon, for want of a better word. And they all handle solidly. You upgrade them, change their handling, their recoil, their damage output, things like that. All standard fare, works quite nicely. It's good. The shooting mechanics are solid. The powers you get from your glove are a nice addition. I like it. But by default, you have a shock ability that basically has a small cooldown that you can use to stun, delay robots that can be upgraded. You then have 2 or 3 other abilities, such as Frost, a shield, telekinesis, things like that, that you can also upgrade. And these other powers are interchangeable. You can swap them in and out depending on your scenario. But I felt after a while, I only ever really relied on one power to see me through most of the game because I didn't really need to use the others, um, which was a bit of a shame because it seems like the game isn't asking you to change up your method and the way you combat opponents and things like that. It's great initially, messing around, trying the new powers, seeing what works and what doesn't. But I just found that after I'd upgraded it a little bit, telekinesis was perfect. Literally just throw them up in the air, throw the robots up in the air, smash them into the ground, a couple of shotgun blasts to the face, and you move on. And that's kind of where I found things to get more and more repetitive in terms of you're just doing that the same thing. It's not asking you to mix things up, to try different combat methods. Just rinse and repeat. Now, all the robots do have, you can scan them using your scanner, do have vulnerabilities and resistances, but nothing really seems resistant to a shotgun or an axe to the face, so you just stick with that. The only time you may have to rejig your loadout is against bosses. Now, they do sometimes require a little bit of extra thinking, but most of the times, as long as you have enough health packs, you can literally just grind the bosses down and you're done. I will say that they have ridiculously large health bars. All of them do. They are bullet sponges, to say the least. And it was also the boss fights where I found the FOV issues to be the most annoying. A lot of the boss fights are very fast. They're often scooting around the edges of the map, jumping in, trying to hit you, shoot at you, do an AoE attack, whatever it might be. Because the FOV is so tight, the viewing, it's such a tight viewpoint, I found that I was getting quite frustrated in some of the fights because you were dying to really cheap deaths because the robots were moving so fast you didn't have the opportunity to spin round quick enough to defend against the attacks, dodge or counter shoot or do whatever, do an ability to mitigate the incoming attack. And so having an FOV slide where you can just see a bit more of the screen would have gone no end, but alas, it's not. The action does move at a fair pace, I will say that. You're never given a moment to, not so much rest, but to be bored during the encounter, during any encounter. Except possibly when you have to go through dialogue. Now, the scripted moments, the bits when you get some exposition and you're talking to characters, for me, some of that stuff went on for far too long and gets boring. And also, for me, the quality of the writing was poor, but I'll speak about that in a minute or two. When you aren't fighting waves of angry mustachioed robots or little robots that look like they're rejects from the Robot Wars TV show, you've got some puzzles to solve. You can go through upgrades at these vending machines, this upgrade / vending machines, which is nice, where you spend components that you get from defeating enemies. Now, in terms of the puzzles, there's nothing that's literally going to test your time, your patience too much, or your brain cells. They're quite light and they're quite numerous to a certain extent. So you're moving on from one to another, but they're relatively varied. There's quite a few small puzzles. There's, I think, 4 for unlocking doors. There's one that makes you follow a light around the outside of a lock that you basically have to click on at the right time when the right place flashes to unlock the door. There's one that involves you shifting multiple coloured dots around so they match up with the outer layer of the lock. There's a pattern-based lock that you have to switch on the correct lights in a particular order. And there's also the old tried and tested Fallout 4 bobby pin puzzle, only this time with extra tendrils. You've also there's a number of other world puzzles in terms of when you're moving through environments to get to other places. There's power routing puzzles, magnet puzzles, even rerouting train carts puzzles. There's lots of things that, let's say, whilst not taxing, they help mix things up. But I will say, once again, by the time you get through to the mid-game point, you've pretty much seen everything you need to see. But if you're okay with that, you'll have a good time. Now, on to the writing, and generally the story. Oh boy, the writing. Pretty much Welcome to Bioshock if it was written by a horny, grumpy 13-year-old boy. The main protagonist, who's P3, basically has two styles. Style 1 is, I'm an angry, sweary man. And style 2 is, I'm an angry, sweary, impatient man. There's no nuance to him at all. He is as 90s action movie protagonist as they come. If he doesn't get the answer he wants, then he'll shout at you. If he gets the answer he wants, he'll probably shout and swear at you. And I will say this. There are two words that he says repeatedly, which is crispy critters. And if I ever hear those words again, it'll be... Oh, blimey. The story itself is okay. If you've played these types of games before, you'll kind of guess where it's going within the first couple of hours. Not going to set the world on fire, but does a good job of moving everything forward. The dialogue itself, that can... I don't know, sometimes that's weird. You either get very short conversations, or you get just dialogue that just goes on and on and on, and you just lose interest. I mean, there's one mission where you have to speak to a particular android to get a door open, which you would, fair enough, you've seen it in these types of games before. You need to go to someone, give them a thing, they then say yes, and they'll go off and open a door for you. And at this point, they give you a little bit of exposition, and they're supposed to sort of go through, the lore a little bit, but my goodness, does it go on. And by the time this robot actually gets to open this door, I just wanted to turn P3's shock power on myself, to be honest. I'd had enough. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. May I introduce you to Nora?
What the fuck? Fuck me!
Oh, what a stud! I can't get enough. Jocks, let me tie you to the bed, baby. No need to fight back, sugar. Oh, you're gonna love this.
Don't let her bind your arms. Can't you see I'm trying? Open to suggestions! Bring me to her sensor manipulator, quick!
How titillating. Rebellious dominant men really turn me on.
Now, the first couple of times you meet Nora, her style and her language, it's mildly humorous. This semi-slutty upgrade machine, whatever you want to call her, sentient AI, it's funny. But then, as time goes on and you see her, you come across her more and more, it just starts no longer being funny, rather unfunny. And some of the language that is used and some of the writing that is used, I have to say, I'm not a prude. Even I thought it was getting close to the bone and somewhat inappropriate, given the world we live in today and how it's expected that female protagonists, yes, she is an AI, should be treated. The whole thing seems to be written from someone that has basically sat through and watched 90s action movies and 90s comedies, and suddenly thinks that's how things work now. That's how protagonists should speak. That's how you get a laugh. You be rude and crude and all that sort of thing. And there's just no nuance in it. It's just all very one note. And I wish the care and attention that was put into the world building would have gone into the writing as well. And this brings me to my opinion on this game. Have I enjoyed my time with it? Yes, for the most part. I know I sound somewhat negative, but I feel I want to get these impressions and opinions out there. I think don't want to gloss over the fact that this game has some issues. it's still enjoyable to play. Yes, very much so. Would I personally pay £50 or £60 on chosen platform, whether it be PlayStation,
Power,
Steam,
there's no denying it. But we still need to
etc.?
find a way
No,
past
I
all these
wouldn't.
goddamn magnets.
And I think that's the kicker. I've enjoyed this more because this game is on Game Pass. If you have a Game Pass subscription, I recommend you giving it a go and just trying it yourself, seeing if you like it. There's no harm or no foul here. You can try it. If you don't like it, delete it. No worries about that if you have a Game Pass subscription, Xbox or PC. And I think that's the reason why I've enjoyed it a little bit more, knowing that I haven't had to specifically shell out £50, £60 to pay for it. It's a solid game that tries to do a lot of things, and some things work more than others. Combat, the aesthetic design, some of the world building, it's all great. I just feel if they just reined in and not tried to throw everything into the pot all at once and focused on certain areas, probably would have been a killer game in my opinion. But decide for yourself. As I say, if you've got a Game Pass subscription, give it a go. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Much appreciated. As I say, I've been Super Socks. If you like this video, click on the subscribe button, click on the little bell notification so you know when my next video is going up. But in the meantime, thanks everyone for watching, and see you soon. Bye.